My secret, just do something that ain't nobody ever done before, but make it sound like something that's always been there forever.
Hello, welcome to This Filipino American Life, a podcast that explores the nuanced experiences of Filipinos in the United States at iba pa.
What?
Woo! I am Joe Bernardo, and I'm joined by my fellow hosts,
Ryan Carpio.
Elaine Delalis. And...
Mike.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Pew, 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 pew.
I got it.
Oh, sorry. I thought...
That's not working.
I'll do it. Pew, pew, pew.
I don't want Action Bronson.
I don't know what that means. Oh.
That's new. Instead of ham horn, it said Action Bronson.
That's
Awesome.
That's
And we today are in San Francisco.
What?
San Francisco.
How did we do that?
City.
Weren't we always in your dining room? How did we get here? Aww.
That was awesome.
I should rename that the Ryan Horn.
Ryan Horn.
Wah, wah.
Oh, no, that's a scream. Sorry. I don't know what's happening with my...
We are in San Francisco.
We are in San Francisco. We are actually at Archipelago Filipino Bookstore.
Yay, Archipelago.
Woo! Thanks to Lily Prijoles for hosting us today.
Yay. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you. And we are joined by some of the rest of our TFAL family. Want to introduce yourselves?
Rhean Fajardo.
Woohoo! And
Roger Habon.
Yeah.
So who's Rhean and who's Roger, Joe?
so Roger has composed the music that TFAL is known for in the intro. The kind of smooth hip hop beats. Everybody can jam to music.
Jam to?
Yeah.
Thanks, Dad.
You get
the jump out?
you get the boogie. You could jump out to that music. Yeah.
Ooh, ooh, boogie, woogie.
So Roger's originally from Seattle or Renton, Washington,
Yes.
and he is now in the Bay Area. Where are you living? In Oakland, correct?
Yes, currently.
Yeah.
I'm moving down to Los Angeles next week.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Nice.
So he's gonna join TFAL.
They're going to put you to work.
Yeah, I imagine.
You get to drive out to the valley.
No, he's gonna help out with some other projects that we currently in the pipeline. And then we're also joined by Rhean Fajardo, who is our TFAL legal advisor.
Hi, everyone.
Make sure we don't do illegal things.
Yeah.
I'm watching you very closely right now.
So today, we have a TFAL pan of the episode, correct, Elaine?
Yes, that person is... I'm going to ruin your name. I'm so sorry. Vincent Palengue.
Palenge.
Balangue.
Balengua?
Okay, there you go. See, I'm bad.
Balingua?
Balengua.
Sorry, one of them just ruined your last name.
I know, apologize.
Or both of them.
Thank you anyway.
Thank you. Thank you for being the T. Okay, so we've been saying TFAL pan, but friend of episode Berto Ponce pointed out we should just start calling people T-Pals.
Because it was right there, and we
whole
didn't
time.
realize
And we
it.
didn't see it. So
It was lobbed to us, and we struck out.
yeah.
Pretty
Wait, so
much.
you guys didn't like the T-Fools idea?
that was interesting.
A little pejorative, but...
No, we want pals, not fools.
I like it. I like T-Pals.
So thank you, Vincent B. Vincent B.
all right.
right on.
Vince B. BB.
Oh.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. So, yes, today we're in the Bay Area. We have, in our future episodes, we're going to interview some other folks. Hopefully, I'm hoping to interview the narrator from TFC.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
This is TFC!
Have you identified him
I
yet?
don't know.
I have no idea who it is, but...
Oh, we can find that out.
Watch a show with
should
no
definitely find that out.
interference. I was like, oh,
What?
it's interference. That's how they say it in Britain. It's all
Like
right.
like no commercials?
No commercials.
Is that the idea?
No interference.
Coming up sa Bulitang America!
I love it.
That's way too
Anyways.
accurate.
I want to interview
Hey, is
that
it
guy.
you?
I know. Are
Is
you
this
lying?
going to be like the big reveal?
Yeah, dude. Joe's gonna interview himself. Hey, how's it going? Hello. I'm actually Joe. Joe from DFC. Oh man, come at us.
No, don't come at us.
It's good. We have a lawyer. It's good.
No.
Rhean's shaking her head.
Like, no.
No.
But TFC,
Joke
if you'd like to sponsor this
only.
Filipino American Life, contact us at thisfilipinoamericanlife@gmail.com.
All in good fun.
And if that other guy ever leaves TFC, you know who to call.
Joe, Ed, or Ryan.
So, actually, before we get into our episode, we have a few kind of business items we want to talk about. A friend of ours, Dylan Delvo, actually pointed out to me about our last episode about Filipino associations. And just to let you know what he wrote, he said that he liked the episode, but we didn't mention that especially in the 1920s and 30s, Filipino associations were more than just social clubs like we talked about. They're also means of survival for especially Filipinos back in the 20s and 30s. And it was just a missed opportunity for us to talk about that. And I just want to let Dylan know and just everybody know that, we probably forgot to talk about that. And we actually thank you for pointing that out to us. Yeah. And hopefully in the future, more folks are pointing out any kind of mistakes or any kind of omissions that we have. We're not perfect. We don't know everything.
Oh, I know nothing.
So, just if we ever forget anything or didn't talk about a certain issue, please just contact us and we will try to talk about that the next time. Right. But I also wanted to bring up our voicemail. We had a few voicemail questions. So after, a year that we had voicemail?
Yes.
We have 4 new voicemails.
Yeah. The number is 805-396.
Isn't it 894?
I thought it was 888
Dos.
No?
I don't know.
That's a dance. Ocho.
We'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
Well, anyway, so we have a few more voicemails that we want to talk about. And we want to play it for you, and then hopefully you can answer some of these questions. So without further ado, here is the first voicemail.
Hello, TFAL. This is Ryan doing a test run for Google.
That was me? What?
Oh, wait.
That guy sounds a little familiar.
Oh, what
That's
is
the
that?
wrong
That
file.
was the wrong file. That was me. I was like, what is that one? What is that?
All right, we'll go to the serious one. The
Okay,
serious one. Serious one.
TFAL, hello.
What is that? Is that you?
Is this a serious
That's
one?
the second one.
That's the second serious one.
Oh, my
No,
goodness.
that was actually Noel. Noel Figueroa, shout out to you.
So it worked. It worked is the
yes.
point.
805-394-TFAL.
889.
805-394
TFAL.
TFAL.
Okay.
Wait, what's the number?
We are never going to get another voicemail. guys.
805-394 TFAL.
There you go.
Okay. So serious.
Okay.
This is one from a dude from Connecticut.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing this evening? It is Monday, August 28th. My name is JR and I am calling from Hartford, Connecticut. I'm calling because I wanted to ask if you guys, I haven't listened for a while, I've been doing work stuff, but if you guys have addressed this or not on the podcast, the fact that everyone keeps calling the Filipino culture, and especially the food, the latest trend. Now, I understand that it's nice that it's becoming popular. You know, like Andrew Zimmern even said in the 1970s, there were only 3 sushi restaurants in New York City as compared to today. But, you know, maybe we'll see more Filipino cuisine restaurants throughout the country if this trend keeps up. But I just want to know if maybe there's a better word people can use. It seems kind of hurtful to call something that people eat for a living to be a trend. I know when my mother was a child, before she immigrated to America, she longed for a prime rib and didn't want people to be here like, oh, that was last season. This season is the cute, kitschy Filipino food. You know what I mean? Just looking for opinions and your answers on this. Let me know. And through the podcast, obviously. I don't expect a call back. But love what you guys do and keep it up. We hear you in Connecticut.
We're in Connecticut.
Could we
Hartford.
Connecticut.
could we actually call him back if we just give his number?
I think so.
Like just personal calls to people, leave a
It's
voicemail.
like,
It's like, hey, got your voicemail? How's it going?
Hi, this is TFAL calling back whatever his name was.
JR.
JR. Oh, that's so Filipino. His name
it
is
J-
JR.
Okay. So what do you guys think?
We're not a trend. We're food.
What do you think about the whole label that we are a trend?
Somebody had to make a mistake. Let's say it like that. I mean, part of it is what I mean by that is like those things happen, and the conversation is almost like imminent to occur also after it. Like somebody had to have said something like that for us to defend it. Do you know what I mean by that?
True.
Like I feel like that is a great like punch on both sides. A punch thrown by folks who have no idea that we've been here, and then a punch for us to be able to say, hey, wait a minute, we've been here. So I think it's a good place to start. It's not the ideal, of course, but come at me. I want it. I want that.
Stop saying
I know, but I feel
Why
like
so defensive right
You're
now?
very,
no,
very
but you know what I mean.
aggressive,
I know
actually.
this is so weird.
Is it because you're from the streets?
Were people giving you a hard time about that
They
Dodgers
were.
hat that you're wearing?
Oh.
Is that what it is?
There's a reason why we're not filming this, but I'm wearing a Dodger cap. But
And then I had an oyster cap that looks like the Dodger cap.
but the point I'm making is I think that we take it for what it is, and then figure out a way to express ourselves in a deeper way for folks to understand that, you know, we I think I side with JR. Like we're not a trend, right? We're not a trend, but when are we able to say that without a conversation, right? So even though it's not ideal, I think I welcome the opportunity to say it and for people to actually pay attention. Because if there's no controversy and nobody's listening to you say we're not a trend,
Yeah.
So that's my angle.
Yeah, I think, when we talk about trends, we talk about something that's very popular in the mainstream at the moment, right? So, yes, it is probably a trend now more than it has been in the past, but for us it's like JR was saying, it's part of our culture, it's part of how we grew up. We've always eaten Filipino food, so it's kind of weird to think of it that way, but if you look at it from the perspective of mainstream culture, yeah, I could see it that way. I mean, I never ate Burmese food, I think, until I lived in San Francisco, and Burmese food is a lot trendier here than I think certain parts of Simi Valley where I grew up. So, yeah, it's a boon to the Filipino restaurant industry and anything that kind of helps Filipino entrepreneurs who are looking to break into the business that way. I think it's great, and it's great if other cultures are experiencing Filipino cuisine for the first time and they're liking it, and maybe it will be part of the mainstream culture more for them, and not just adobo and pancit and lumpia.
Right.
I mean, I think we to us we're not a trend, and that's kind of a controversial stance, but there is no denying that there are more Filipino food entrepreneurs out there now than there were, say, 5-10 years ago. So in that sense, there is a growing presence. I don't know if it's trendy. That's just kind of like a easy word to whatchamacallit, to latch onto. But to me, like I don't really care if other people don't like our food or like our food, or like I don't care if we are on Bon Appetit magazine or anything like that. Like that doesn't matter to me. I just want better Filipino restaurants out there.
The more options is
Yes.
I just want to not get angry in line at Hope You Like It because some tita cuts me off and I become livid. I want more of that.
Yeah.
I don't want more of that. I want less of that. And I want real restaurants that don't make me angry.
I definitely want more restaurants that don't serve everything on styrofoam, and who use better cuts of meat. I don't want the restaurants where it's just all bones and all taba.
Or like
On the
mongo with just mongo and no like shrimp or no pork in it.
If a trend does that, then or whatever this current what they call Filipino food movement, if that does that, that's cool. But I could care less about like Anthony Bourdain saying that we are the latest
Ooh,
food
shots
trend.
fired.
But like Anthony Bourdain, if you want to come on This Filipino American Life, we'll totally contact you and talk to you. This Filipino American Life at gmail.com.
All right. Well, we could talk more about that in another episode. But let's go on to the next one.
Hi, Joe. So, my name is Stephanie, and I have a question. I'm Southeast Asian, and I'm married to a Filipino. My husband has always identified Filipinos being part of the Asian ethnicity, but I also have Filipino friends who insist that they be considered Pacific Islanders and are not Asian. We have 3 kids, and when it comes to fill out their school forms, I notice Filipinos are always categorized separately from Asians and even Pacific Islanders. So, would you address why Filipinos really Asian or Pacific Islanders, and if so, why is Filipino a separate box or category of its own on a lot of these legal forms? Thank you.
Good question. Hey, PhD Joe Bernardo, could you explain that to us?
I want to ask you all though. Did you identify with this Asian American identity growing up or even now? Anybody?
I did.
You did.
Like
Okay.
in college, because I grew up in San Fernando Valley, and because I went to the Filipino school, is St. Genevieve. What's up, St. Genevieve? I grew up with too many Filipinos, so like in college, I was like, I'm not going to be only Filipino. I'm going to identify as like an Asian American. So I did a lot of the Asian American student organizations, but like. I identify as both because I am both. I'm Filipino American, I'm Asian American, and to answer that question as to why is there a box for Filipinos, it's because like Filipinos, they're one of the largest populations in this country, and we had a loud voice and we advocated. There was political agency to get our forms to have us as written as on those forms, because I mean this is my personal opinion. I think that the way politics works amongst Asian Americans and the API community, we're all fighting for a small pie. And so by Filipinos putting their name on the pie, it's like they just want more money. They want more of the pie in terms of like funding and whatnot. So that's that's what you do. And Filipinos were lucky enough to be able to do that. And so to like my Vietnamese American brothers and sisters, Cambodians, Laotians, if their communities can do the same, then by all means do it. Because I'm about disaggregation and then an allocation of funds to all these populations that are in need of it, because I do believe that the Asian American minority myth that applies to most of our community is terrible because it disenfranchises Southeast Asians who don't follow into the myth, and specifically Pacific Islanders that don't follow into that as well.
All
That's
right.
me.
You answered the question.
Sweet! My Asian American Studies degree paid off. High five, Mom and Dad. That those loans were worth taking out.
Anyone else? How did you identify? How was it like in Seattle, Raj?
Well,
Oh,
I'm sorry. I mean, just looking back, like at my experience in Washington State, compared to living in the Bay Area, I realized that it's very, very white up there, without a doubt. But I grew up in an area that has been written about as, extremely, for lack of a better term, diverse. There's a lot of heterogeneity in the high school that I grew up at, which is Renton High School, and that was located kind of on the edge of South Seattle, where according to census numbers, a lot of spoken languages existed in there. So in Renton High School, there was pretty much a demographic like plurality. Like there were, it was like 29% Asians, Pacific Islanders, 30% black students, 30% white students, and then there was a whole bunch of other people in that mix. So I think in terms of identifying as Filipino, that was kind of a natural gravitation
over Asian American, or?
Over Asian, just because we saw other people at our school that identified as Hmong, as Chinese, as Cambodian, and so seeing those specificities, I didn't feel the need to identify as Asian because other people didn't so generally.
Yeah. Miss Fajardo.
I would say I identified as Asian growing up. I mean, definitely primarily as Filipino. I grew up speaking Tagalog, and I know you did too, Joe, which is kind of an anomaly for Filipino Americans that are born here. And we went to the Philippines pretty frequently when I was growing up for entire summers at a time, every few years. But because I did grow up in a predominantly white community, I did identify with the larger Asian population. But I actually more culturally identified with Latino culture more than like other Asian, what you would think of as traditionally Asian cultures.
Yeah.
Just because there were a lot more Latinos where I grew up,
Yeah.
and food and families, like loud parties and a lot of affection and those kinds of values that I think are more Filipino than quote unquote Asian.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Right.
I remember when the box Filipino in forums started popping up more, and it kind of got me all excited because I didn't know what box to check. Yeah, when I was younger, like filling out forms. So it kind of brings the importance of like what these forms and data that's collected are for, right? I never thought of myself as Pacific Islander, and then someone told me, goes, "Are you Asian? Are you Pacific Islander?" I'm like, I'm Filipino. Like, right? I'm Filipino. There's no box.
Yeah.
I never wanted to check other, right? And so you choose one until I started seeing it more often. And I think that just goes to show, boxes sometimes limit. And but I got excited when I saw the Filipino box. That was really, really cool. But
Yeah.
I also didn't know what to do and how to associate myself and when it came to filling out forms.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's always the troublesome issue of what do you do when you're mixed?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mixed
Right.
race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Such
What about you,
a
Joe?
nuisance.
well, I kind of grew up. I guess I knew I was Filipino, but then when I saw the box, a lot of other Asian, my classmates would say, "Why is Filipino its own separate box?"
Because
Right.
it's awesome. 'Cause we're awesome.
Well, just going back to history, it actually started in the 70s when Filipino organizations lobbied California state government to have a own separate box away from Asian Americans because under the Asian American umbrella, which was a term that just kind of developed in the 60s as a political term, Filipinos get kind of subsumed or hidden or invisible within that box. So Filipino organizations start lobbying California to have its own box. And then when Jerry Brown, the governor of California, way back then, was running for re-election, that was one of his kind of campaign promises to the community that he would have his make legislation that would require that California, whenever time they're doing demographic data collection, that they had to have a Filipino box separate from Asian American.
Good job, Governor Moonbeam.
Moonbeam? Why Moonbeam?
That's what his name
That's what
was.
they called him in the 70s.
That's what they called him in the 70s.
Okay, never mind. I didn't know that.
Well, all this history that you know, you don't know
Yeah.
that.
I know.
Because Jerry Brown's not Asian American.
I'm an 80s
But
kid.
yeah, I think it's all right and it's all wrong using Asian American.
Yeah.
I know some Filipinos who prefer Pacific Islander. They have more.
But we're not poly. Like that makes me uncomfortable because like it takes away from the real poly experience. Like if you're
Poly is Polynesian.
Polynesian,
Yeah.
sorry, yeah. If you're Samoan, if you're Tongan, if you're from Fiji, like they get that's their experience, their life. They have, and it's drastically different in comparison to like the typical Asian American experience, and also like for
What's
me,
a typical Asian
but what's a
American?
typical
Yeah.
Asian American experience, right? Like for
Yeah.
me to use that language, like I'm very biased about that, but I just feel like disaggregation of data helps communities because we don't get lost. So Filipinos in the 70s advocated for themselves because they were getting lost in the shuffle. So that's
Well, I guess what I'm going with that is that I think identity and pan identity is very fluid and very like it just depends where you grew up. It depends on your environment, who you hung out with.
Yeah. What about you, Mike, in
your
Oxnard?
political projects.
Wait, what about me?
Yeah. How did you identify?
Did you identify as Asian American at all?
I don't think I became aware of that as like an option until high school because it was kind of like, so there's a big Filipino population in Oxnard, but I mean, it was kind of just, it was, I didn't think beyond that, I guess, right? Because there was such a large ecosystem of community organizations, hometown associations, families, like, and we were a Navy family. And so, I mean, I think I didn't think there was another identity on top of Filipino that I could even layer onto that, right? And so, but then when I came to Oxnard High School, you know, and I was trying to figure out, you know, what organizations do I join? There wasn't like a Filipino club at Oxnard High School because the Filipino high school in Oxnard is Channel Islands. And so, you know, the only group that I thought I could maybe join was the Asian American Club. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess the Philippines is in Asia, so I guess I could go to this club. But I mean, yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. And it was probably not until like even college when I basically, you know, got kicked out of the School of Engineering and had to pick another major. I was like, oh, Asian American Studies. I guess I could do that because I guess I'm Asian or something. But really understanding kind of the layers of that identity didn't really come to me until I started doing that. So no, literally, like, you know, I kind of just, my experiences and understanding kind of like that level of my identity wasn't something I'd given a lot of thought to, other than meeting people and making friends and trying to figure out my life path, I guess.
Okay.
So, you know, at least in Oxnard, it's kind of like there isn't like organizing around like bringing Asian Americans together. It's like, you know, different ethnic groups or whatever. And then in college, you know, the idea of like a pan-ethnic identity and organizing around that and getting together on that, I started to kind of understand what that meant. But I wasn't really something that I really even had to think about, I think.
Yeah. Okay. But I think we can all agree disaggregated data is the way to go. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So we could talk about that a lot deeper and longer, but we have to get on to our next subject, which is fables, correct?
Ooh, yeah. Folk tales, fables, storytelling.
That's all you, Ryan?
That's all you, right?
You know what's funny is like I was like, oh, we're just gonna go right into it. I didn't think
I didn't think it was gonna break.
Yeah,
no. This is a mini.
It's a mini, no break, yo.
So, my dad was a very good storyteller, and part of the reason I don't know if you remember this, Joe, but when you asked me to do the podcast, I said I love storytelling. I love the idea of like sharing stories about growing up and all that. And I wanted to get a sense from you guys. My dad and my grandma used to tell me a lot of stories, and a lot of my grandma's stories were very Filipino based, and like folk tales on like how the pineapple came to be, or how the saging or the banana became what it was. And you know, it's sometimes romantic, sometimes a little bit weird of why that is, or why we have flat noses, or wantamad stories.
Why do we have flat noses?
I don't. Oh, it had something to do with Juan being lazy, and he didn't.
Who's Juan?
Wantamad is
Wantamad?
Yeah.
Is that where that comes from?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wantamad.
You know why Filipinos have flat noses?
Why?
Because in the Philippines it's hot, so they do this all the time.
So for the radio audience, what Joe did was he wiped his face from his eyeballs to his mouth, pressing down on his nose.
Anyways, I think my dad told me that joke a long time ago.
High five. That's a good one.
But it lives on, right? Like I think part of the storytelling is that you remember it, and I remember a lot of the stories my dad and my grandma told me, and I was curious if any of those stories, like Filipino stories, lived with you growing up, or if you were ever told any. And we're in a bookstore right now, so I'm actually really curious as to, you know, where I could find some of these things for my nephew. Who's
I bet there are books with folktales somewhere around here.
I hope so.
So, Ryan, I'm curious before everyone kind of jumps in. So the stories, it sounds like you heard a lot of stories growing up. Were these stories that you think a lot of kids heard growing up, or was your dad kind of like making up these stories?
So part of it is my dad made up some. Part of it is like the craft of storytelling, especially with kids, is you leave out some details that the kids are supposed to like fill in, or you change it a little bit to see if they were paying attention from the past. But I thought that these were stories that were just like legends. The way they were told to me was like repeated. And then my grandma or my dad would ask me, "Do you remember how?" I'm like, "Of course I do." And then I realized that, oh, my brother knows that story too. And you know, in school, it became kind of like part of the storytelling or the curriculum, how, you know, who wantamad is or something like that. But I didn't hear any of those kind of folk tales as a second grader in the States. I knew some. I knew like the hare and the tortoise story.
Tortoise.
Aesop's fables mostly, right? I heard some of those too, but you know, it was kind of neat to have like, you know, Filipino kind of stories. Like Juan Tamad is very Filipino, right? So I don't know what the equivalent is in. Is there a Lazy John, I guess, in the States? So I was just kind of curious, but
and there's also like Lola Basyang.
Yeah,
right?
there's
What's Lola Basyang?
It's kind of like like a I don't know, Grandma Basyang.
Oh,
Mother
Goose.
Like Mother Goose stories.
So she would tell stories or.
Was there a bunch of
myths
kids
and
living in a
stuff like
chinelas? Like,
because of the
Because
kids
there's
living in the
living in
shoe.
the shoe. Don't laugh at me. Come
Okay,
on.
what's an example of one of these fables?
So one of the the tales is one of the ones that I know most is the piña story, right? The story of the pineapple and how it came to be. And so the legend is that there's a girl named Pina who was kind of always being asked to do chores, and she was always asking her mom, like, where is this, where is that? And her mom would always say, oh, use your eyes. It's here. Why don't you use your eyes and actually look for it? To the point where the mom got mad enough and kind of almost in a cursing way. I wish you had more eyes, Pina. Like, this was a story. I'm totally paraphrasing, but until the following day and Pina was no longer around or something like that. Something really weird. It scared me, by the way. I thought she was kidnapped. And then the mom found that there was a new plant in their backyard, and it had kind of like hair, but the head had a bunch of eyes, and it was the birth of the pineapple and the pina.
But like,
Isn't that scary,
But
though?
where'd the girl go? So the girl's gone.
The girl became pineapple, dude.
She turned into a
That
pineapple.
is the legend of the pineapple,
And then, so
dude.
whenever I eat a pineapple, now I'm gonna be thinking I ate a girl.
Yeah.
That's not good.
I mean, but you remember you're a kid and you're listening to this, and I think it's the first time I realized that this is just a story, right? It's just a story. But also, it's
in
like
high school. You realize that?
Yeah. In high school, I was like, oh man, freshman year. But
think that's
that lived on. I
me.
mean, there's a bunch of them. But I was just curious about hearing. I don't know if you guys were ever told any of those stories or any fables, but
No.
Well, the one I was told was about like don't pee on anthills because then like a duende is gonna come out and curse you, and then you're gonna get sick. And so this is Elaine talking.
Was that something they had to prevent you from doing? Elaine?
No, so that's the weird thing. It's not like I'm going around peeing on anthills.
like, we gotta stop her from doing this. What do we do?
That seems mostly safety driven.
I know.
Well, so to this day, but it's supposed to also be like don't step on anthills and that type of thing. So if I'm like walking like on a lawn or like walking on any type of grass or something, and I step on a bulge, I'm like I'm sorry. Like I will think I'm like a gopher hole or something. Like I will think I'm sorry because I think I'm stepping on duendes, and you're supposed to apologize so that they don't mess with you. So I say that now, me speaking as somebody who has never been to the Philippines but has been told all these stories, but I still think that.
What's a duende?
Oh, a duende is a little like a little man person troll that can mess with you, and I believe in them because my cousin Norman, he fell and he cracked his head, like he had a hairline fracture on his skull, and after that happened when he was a kid, he would see these little things and I say, oh, he saw duendes, and he would talk to them, and they would mess with him, and they would tell him to do things. I don't know if he was making it up, but my dad always said Norman
Pretty
was
sure it's because he
Is
fell on
Norman
his head.
okay now?
Norman's fine. Norman's great. Norman, what's up, G? What's up, Norman?
But
yeah.
that's some of it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I don't think my mom never told me, or my Lola never told me these quote unquote stories. I think my Lola told me one time that there's a fable of why bangos had like little small tiniks.
Why?
Well, I don't know why, but she says it's because like it's a weak fish or something like that. But like
We're all like
there's like a
expecting
whole story.
punchline.
I know.
And
Sorry,
we're
there's
like
no
waiting for
punchline.
the punchline.
Roger's like not even on the mic. He's just laughing at you.
I could probably look it up and see what the story is behind. I didn't know about these like kind of fables until I kind of just read it online.
Uh-huh.
And then but I've heard of those little things like don't go to bed with your hair wet.
I do that
you
all
go
the time.
blind.
I do that all the time. I should be blind. I mean, I have thick glasses, so maybe.
Yeah. Or you're not supposed to take a bath during Good Fridays.
I don't listen to any of
Wait, so are
those.
those specifically Filipino things? I always thought that was just normal things that parents tell their kids, regardless, right? Like the whole hair thing and the.
I don't know. My dad used to say, "Oh, don't go to bed with your hair wet. You'll go bald."
Not blind, go
No.
bald.
And he says, "Look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar." I don't know why that came from, but that's what he said.
Wait.
He was reaching for a
I
famous
know,
bald
totally.
guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so my friend Paul has this funny story where when he was a kid, he was like at a Chinese restaurant, right? And then like this uncle, like his great uncle went up to him and he said, "Paul, don't ever eat red meat and tea. It causes a synthetic leather." and like kind of pointed to his arm like that, like and then like
Joe is caressing Ryan.
and then I was like, "Paul, what the hell is a synthetic leather?" And he goes, "I don't know. That's what he kept saying. Synthetic leather. It causes a synthetic leather." And then like when he told me, I was like, "Hey, what if that's true?" So I googled like red meat,
Synthetic
tea, synthetic leather. If there's anything remotely related to whatever that is, but apparently it's nothing.
Oh, okay. Were you surprised?
Oh my god, the stomach hurts.
And now Paul always eats red meat and tea.
I know.
And it's also the same uncle who would he would get like the fish in the Chinese restaurant. He'd get the fish, and then he would put duck wings on the fish, and go to Paul. "Hey, Paul, have you ever seen an animal like that before?"
That guy's a lot of fun.
I know.
We should have him on.
Why isn't he here?
Does he have a belt that says Viva a Single?
It's not the same guy. Not
Like,
the same
sure.
guy. Yeah.
I mean, because I think like with your Lola telling you about that fish,
Yeah.
I thought like, oh, it's like my mom like lying to me about food so she can steal all the best parts of the food.
Crab,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
crab.
Yeah,
Maybe
so-
that's why
I
they
think that's
started
what-
telling these stories.
Because okay, so like on bangos, you were talking about bangos and it has like little bones, but the tian, the stomach is like the best part, the belly.
The belly, yeah.
So my mom always eats the belly, and I told Vince because we were at a festival, the Film Arts fundraiser, and how there was like a bangos belly with rice as one of the dishes. It was my favorite one. And I was telling my cousin Vince, like, dude, I finally got to eat it. It was like the best. And Vince was like, your mom's still lying to you about food? like, why couldn't you ever eat the belly of the bangos? And I'm like, because my mom would just take it all. She's not lying. She's just taking it all. I mean, so maybe she's like, your Lola's telling you that so you wouldn't eat bangos, so she
Maybe.
could eat the whole thing.
Maybe that uncle was just saying he wants all the red meat and tea.
Yeah, like, Paul, don't do it because I want to eat it all.
synthetic leather.
That's a reach.
But you know, the legends, like there's the legend of
Zelda?
Bernardo Carpio,
Bernardo Carpio.
right? I don't know if you guys know the legend Bernardo Carpio. I actually don't know, but he's supposed to be like the strong man. He's like a mythical
Wait,
Filipino legend.
it's a real thing?
Yeah. He's supposed to be like the cause of earthquakes or something.
I thought you were combining the two of you together.
Like Voltron.
Like
Oh,
Voltron.
oh, no.
Bernardo Carpio.
I did that once, and then someone goes, "Oh, like the legend." I was like, "What?
What?
There's a legend?" I didn't know about Bernardo Carpio until. Yeah.
Because
But-
that means your powers combined make you legendary?
We eat everything.
That's your power.
That's my power.
Superpower.
No, but I love the stories. I think sometimes they were timely. Sometimes maybe they were made up just to make us. I thought they were made up so I could not be lazy. For example, or like the Want the Mud stories is like, hey,
Teach
don't
you
be
lessons.
lazy. Teach you lessons
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
So you're saying you were lazy in those streets?
Maybe, and it's kind of like a way for kids to do chores, right? Like, don't just sit there. Want the mud, right? Just sat there waiting for the guava thing to fall down. Like I remember that still. Like you just sat there.
Is that the story of Want the Mud?
Yeah.
I don't know the story.
I don't know
Want
that
the Mud
story.
has like there's a bunch of them. Like him and like crap. Like he's just such a weird kid. He was like a weird kid who like was super lazy, and the lessons there was like don't be lazy, pay attention. don't be like Wantamad. There's those stories, and then there's
So-
animal stories and fruits and
Oh, what was the one with the Carabao?
I don't know if this one might be something my grandma made up, but maybe somebody here would know. But why does the carabao and the cow, why is their skin the way they are? Because if you're in the Philippines, a carabao is a very like the skin's like really really tight, right? Or it's and then tough, and then the cow or the calabao is like
soft?
it's like all loose. But the legend is that they were bathing once in the lake and they switched clothes. Or they switched skin. This could be something my grandma made up, but I'm like, I'll never forget that.
So they're like taking a bath, and then they come out,
Skinny dipping.
and then they put. So the cow put on
Maybe they
some
were
soft like skin.
Yeah, they just switch clothes and they're like,
And then the carabao
doesn't fit.
did the fat guy little coat, and then that's why.
Yeah,
That's
pretty much.
Okay.
But there's stories about like the monkey and the turtle, and the monkeys are usually like portrayed as like not so very bright, and the turtle was always portrayed as someone very bright.
Speaking of the monkey and the turtle, I just thought of the monkey part. My mom my dad used to say to not hit, like a serving.
Oh.
Like
Whoa.
this,
She got a prop,
I
everybody.
got a prop, like this giant
Please be
spoon, like the fork spoon.
Yeah.
So like if you have like a giant serving spoon, my mom used to say, don't hit people with it, because if you hit someone with it, you'll turn into a monkey.
Or it hurts.
I don't know, but so she would always tell
Elaine,
me.
were you hitting people with giant spoons?
I think I
While
might
peeing
have
on an anthill.
It's very revealing of my childhood. But I don't know if I was running around with like large serving spoons hitting people.
Did
but
you stop? Or did you?
I don't think I was actually doing it. So I don't
okay.
know why she was telling me don't do it. You'll turn into a monkey.
Yeah.
So is that a story?
Perhaps.
That's what I'm asking.
I mean, also like you brought up like kind of like the scary folklore stuff, right? And I think some of the scary stuff is interesting too. Like how our parent, or at least my sister would use the scary ones on me. My grandma not so much. But
The mumu?
Yeah, like like the duende or the mumu, the aswang, whatever it might be, right? Some of these
White
stories,
lady.
like the white lady.
What's the white lady? What's the modern day white lady, Joe?
With the yoga mat and the
And the-
expensive coffee.
And the pumpkin spice latte.
In a water bottle.
Scary white lady.
She's got a clean canteen or a hydro flask with her.
I'm so glad we're where we are right now, actually.
You sound like you're describing yourself, Elaine.
I don't own a hydro flask, and I hate pumpkin spice lattes, but I do go to yoga. So shut up.
So there are like Filipino fables or folklore in the Philippines. I wonder if there are ones based off Filipino American history or about
We should
Filipino
make
American-
one.
That's why
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious as to, like, I don't know, right? I don't know if there's like stories in whatever generation of folks that came to the States to,
You
know,
should
just
write
to
one.
share.
I mean, there are children's books. I remember, what's that one? Lakas and the Manila Town Fish.
Oh, yeah,
right?
that's
Yeah.
from here.
Yeah, that's from here.
Awesome.
That's Soma.
There's
Cool.
one about like a girl who wanted pancit at her party.
This is Elaine.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was just Elaine.
Hey,
I was like, oh, that's like.
That's
No,
like Elaine.
hey, because I took a picture with it at a either festival of books or something once, and I was just like, oh hey, it's Filipino. I think
Yeah.
I bought it.
Yeah.
It's probably somewhere in my book stacks.
So yeah,
It's
we should
probably
think
in
of.
the store.
We should try to think of one.
Once upon a time, there was a boy named Ryan Joe. Ryan Joe, combo name. and their two best friends,
Wow, you're making this up right now.
and Mike.
Freestyling.
And they started a podcast. Just kidding.
Where's the lesson
Yeah,
there?
never happened.
start a podcast.
Well, what even the scary ones? Were you guys actually scared as kids? Or
Yes.
were you guys ever told? Roger's nodding. Like
Yeah.
what?
What's a
Like, which one?
story?
I mean, you mentioned the white lady.
Mhm.
I think I was like 10 years old when I first heard about that, and I was in the Philippines, like on
Oh.
vacation with my parents. And so, I was like the one like English speaking kid. You know?
Yeah.
And so I think that was sort of a function to scare me as
Uh-huh.
sort of the the guest.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was always something I was wary of, and probably like driven to tears, just looking over my shoulder
Right.
because all my cousins were telling me like not to fall asleep, not to go into the
my
shed.
God.
That's not cool.
It's
not cool.
Not to go, not to play out and the farm at night. And so
Right.
I always saw these things as like preventive or cautionary, or
Like a safety issue, like don't go out in the farm at night.
Yeah, I think if your aunts or your Lola or Lolas would tell you that, but I think with the cousins, it's just pure mischief.
Yeah, they're just trying to fuck with you.
Yeah.
But I think the white lady, it's to prevent people from picking up hitchhikers. I think
Oh,
that was like the urban legend.
Oh.
Yeah,
Is it really?
yeah. I think I read it somewhere.
Oh.
Probably Wikipedia or something. But it's like, it was supposly,
But I mean,
that's a legend.
isn't everybody in the Philippines a hitchhiker with like the jeep?
But well, yeah, gee, but like,
And what is that saying?
Don't pick them up.
But so how many of these folktales, I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have explored this, how many of these go back to either like, maybe indigenous like oral traditions or like Spanish,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're all mixed, some of them. I don't know which ones are which, but
And I'm sure they've been reinterpreted from different countries as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we have our share of like, tales that we just kind of put a Filipino spin on, so it's more relevant for us. The stories are all the same. Aesop's fables are old. I mean, so, and I'm talking like ancient.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. But we've incorporated some of those into our legends and our stories with Filipino names and animals that we see, or fruits and vegetables that we eat.
We should totally write one.
Yeah, I think it would be kind of cool. I don't know what story. I don't have any kids.
I would talk about a child who has a pet pig named Lechon Kawawa.
Oh no!
And how they raised it.
It almost feels like you already know the fate of that pet pig.
What's the fate, right?
It reminds me of Homer Simpson taking care of that lobster.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
oh, that reminds me of the fable of how Filipinos started eating lechon.
What's that?
What is it?
What is
It's
it?
like before Filipinos used to have pigs as pets, and they would keep them in the house. And apparently, the story goes that one day the house burned down, but then like they looked for the pig.
Oh, no.
They're like, oh, where's the pig? Where's the pig?
no.
They started petting it, and then like they put it to their mouth, and they found out how tasty it was.
No.
Yes. Yes, and they started eating the pig. And
Did
then
you read that on the back of a menu?
no,
It's not real.
I think my mom told me that. And then the legend goes, after that, people started burning their houses.
What? Wait, that's the story. That's the lesson there.
So burn your house down.
It wasn't like
definitely missed the point of that.
they decided to.
It's like the best part's in the rump.
Yum, yum.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah.
Well, I'm curious about like one last thing for folks who have kids, and are there, would you tell stories like that, or does that even?
Do you tell your
kids
kids
stories, or
stories
do you
like that?
read more like?
So I didn't hear a lot of Filipino fables or anything like that when I was growing up. My parents definitely told stories, and they were always lesson driven, but they weren't as fantastic as the stories you guys have been telling during this podcast session. My daughter actually is a huge reader, and she loves stories. She loves making up stories. She's always making
That's
little
awesome.
books all the time. She makes up characters.
Can she write a story about Lechon Kawawa?
She would definitely. She'll bust that out tonight. Illustrated and everything.
Yes.
And then you guys can post a picture of it later.
Oh, totally.
But yeah, no, my husband Velasca, is a wonderful storyteller. He was a creative writing major at UW, and he still writes short
UW
stories.
stands for University of Washington.
University of Washington. And he writes short stories. He tells stories. He does a thing with my kids where they like continue, right? So he'll start, and then they have to do the next part, and then they'll go
keep
around
going?
like Red Robin style. Yeah.
Oh, it's like an
Round
improv
Robin style.
it's an
Yeah, like
exercise.
improv.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like if they get a little stuck, he'll try to help them along, but yeah, I mean, storytelling is a big part of our family and the way we raise our kids, but I don't think they're necessarily rooted in Filipino or Vietnamese. My husband's Vietnamese and Filipino or Vietnamese folklore.
But we remember all the scary ones, though, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the great thing. You know, all the stories that you guys have been telling, I haven't heard any of them, actually. And I've never even heard of Wanta Mud.
Oh.
But I think the parts that really stick with you, the reason why you remember it is because the imagery of it is so great, right? Like that piña story.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that now that I've heard it from you.
Yeah.
I'm never going to eat pineapple.
It's not going to put me off of eating pineapple.
Almost put me off. I'm like, no.
Yeah, I'll definitely still eat it.
Yeah.
I never do that want to mud story, but my mom has yelled at me want to mud.
Yeah, probably it'll be like,
Yeah.
hey, get off your butt, right?
Yeah.
'Cause it's kind of, my dad used to
And I'd
say
be
the same
like,
thing to me.
my name's not one. You now, has your
Now
mom,
I'm getting it.
You thought one tamad is a Tagalog word.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
one
it's
tamad.
like something like to curse at me or something.
oh yeah, your mom does yell that at you.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Discoveries. This is why we have this
Blowing
podcast.
my mind right now.
This is why we do this podcast to have some discoveries.
So
like, just
Mike's
learn
mom
something right
yells
now.
want to mud at him all the time.
It's like, what does that mean? Is that like a way to say like?
You're lazy.
Nagwawantad ka kanina.
Oh Lord.
All right.
Yeah, but I appreciate it, and I do want to kind of explore the bookstore again. We're at Archipelago Books.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, I'm probably gonna pick up some books here.
Where is Archipelago Books? Ryan, Joe.
It's in
Address.
south of Market.
South of
Soma.
Market.
It's
Soma.
1010 Mission Street on the
There you
corner
go.
of Mission and 6th Street.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, we Archipelago Books was at this really cool event called Undiscovered San Francisco. It was at the Mint Building, and it was like a food thing, and there was like all these cultural like vendors. It was really awesome. There was a moo room that was not awesome.
By the way, I posted a picture of that, and then they commented on it.
Oh, they did.
It's like, oh my god, the Moo was commenting on my picture.
Oh.
Like literally.
The Moo has social media.
I don't like that. They're gonna follow us home. It just felt like an indoor FPAC, which is the Festival of Philippine Arts and Culture in Los Angeles, which is going to take place on October 14th on Saturday.
Plug.
It's a plug right now. As a board member, I need to do these things. So go ahead and go to Echo Park Lake on Saturday, October 14th for the Festival of Philippine Arts and Culture. TFAL will be there. I don't know if we'll have a booth, but we'll just be there. Just come by, say hi. You might get a cool high five, a hug, I don't know, maybe a t-shirt.
Or a story.
Or a story.
A joke.
Yeah, a joke.
More likely a
Date with
joke.
Ryan.
Or a date with Ryan.
A date with Ryan.
Yeah. Okay.
Just don't order text.
Inside joke.
Inside joke.
Okay.
All right. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks,
Share your
Raj.
stories. Come into
thanks.
Archipelago Books.
Yeah, subscribe and rate us on Apple Podcasts. Share your Filipino folklore stories on in your review, and we've got 40 reviews as of this recording.
Oh, cool. 40.
Yeah,
Nice.
And thank you, Roger and Rhean, for joining us today.
Thank
Yay.
you for
thank
having
you.
us.
Yes. Thank you for your free labor. Helping us.
Your ongoing
podcast.
free labor.
And then we're gonna get sent out with Roger's music.
This Filipino American Life is produced by Michael Nailat. Our intro and outro music is by Roger Habon, aka 10.4 Raj. Resident reality checker Girly Colado, legal advisor Rhean Fajardo, and graphic design by Vincent Collyer.